Hey, it's Brock here from Rock Hill Farms, and today I want to talk about the financial viability of baling your own hay on a small property. The last few months, I've done a series of videos showing some different baling equipment that works on small tractors and small properties. And I've shown everything about how it works and kind of reviewed the equipment, but this is still fairly expensive equipment. And the question comes down to, if you have 10 acres, 20 acres, 30 acres, 100 acres, at what point does it make sense to buy equipment like this? Because there comes a point where your property's not big enough to cost justify having any baling equipment. Then there's another property size where you should probably buy bigger baling equipment. So behind me are 244 round bales that I got on the second cutting of this property. Now I have 20 acres, but this used to be a 40-acre property. Before I bought my 20, someone else bought the other 20, and they don't live there. So I'm baling this entire 40-acre property, but a big portion of it is not baleable, and there's part of it that he reserves for a hunting area. So I would say we bale between 20 and 25 acres here. So my numbers that I'm giving you today will be based on the idea of baling hay on 20 acres. So first thing we need to do is take a look at the equipment that I'm using and talk about the pricing of different hay baling equipment. So this is the largest baler that I tested because, as I said in the beginning, we're focusing on equipment that you can run on a compact tractor and equipment that actually is cost justifiable for a smaller property. And I think the 4-foot by 5-foot baler is kind of pushing the limits of that category. A baler like this is going to cost you around $50,000 or $60,000. And obviously, you're just not going to get enough hay off of 10 acres or 20 acres to justify buying a baler in that price range. And the bigger the baler you have, the larger the tractor you're going to need to run it, which is an added expense. This baler belongs to a friend of mine who is nice enough to spend the day baling hay with me. I brought my baler over and we did some comparisons. And the most interesting thing is the remarkable similarities between this New Holland baler and the Takakita baler that I'm using. When you open up the backside and the side panels of each of these balers, you'll realize that the design, the engineering, and the controls are very similar. As a matter of fact, the control box used to wrap and eject the bales is almost identical. This is the Takakita baler that I've now used for 2 baling periods on my property. And I've found it to be very reliable and easy to use. I've only had one missed bale out of almost 500 total bales that I did. And that one missed bale was the very first one. And the only reason the first bale didn't wrap is because I didn't get the net wrap fed in far enough. Other than that, it's been pretty much flawless. Now, there are some positives and negatives to this smaller equipment. I mentioned an upfront cost for a new 4x5 New Holland baler being at least $50,000. This baler is less than half of that price. So your upfront costs are dramatically lower. On the downside, the smaller the baler, the slower it will be to actually make your bales. Because I have to stop every time I'm kicking out a bale, and my pickup is not as wide. So if I was just guessing, I would say if it took me 8 hours to bale the hay on my property with this baler, I might have been able to do it in 6 hours with a 4x5. When I first showed this baling equipment, a lot of people were making the comment that a downside to using this smaller equipment is that it would be hard to sell the bales. Well, I can tell you my experience is that is not true at all. I could have easily sold 5 times as many bales as I actually had. The demand for them was huge, at a price that I thought was really good for the volume of hay. But we'll get into all the numbers on my return on investment for this equipment towards the end of the video. But first, I want to tell you guys about the equipment that I'm using. So I already mentioned that the 3x3 round baler is from Takakita. That's a Japanese company, but it was provided to me by Phil at Small Farm Innovations. Phil is an importer for a variety of smaller baling equipment that will suit the needs of a lot of different farmers or property owners. They have this 3-foot by 3-foot size from Takakita. They also sell Mashio cutters, rakes, and balers. The Mashio would be the equivalent size of the New Holland we showed a minute ago in a 4-foot by 5-foot baler. I think Mashio actually has a variety of sizes. Then we have the mid-size that I'm using, and then there is the miniature round bale, which is basically the size and weight of a square bale. The miniature round baler is even more affordable than the 3x3, actually by quite a lot. But the bales on it, to me, would be a lot more of a hassle to deal with. So I think the miniature round bale is more appropriate for a property of 5 to 10 acres, where I think the 3x3 that I have would work better on a bigger property in the 20 to 40 acre range. Now, the actual baler you just watched is not one of the ones sold from Small Farm Innovations. It's just a baler I had access to in the same size range. So now I want to talk briefly about the cutting equipment. Here you see me using a Mashio sickle bar mower, and I have been really impressed with it. The way I'm using it, I believe that this thing will hold up for years with very little maintenance. Now, I have to say that there are a lot of experienced people in the comment section who are telling me that they don't like a sickle bar mower. And only time will tell how my opinion might change, but as of today, I love this sickle bar. Now, Small Farm Innovations has a wide range of different types of mowers, rakes, and tedders available. Previously, before getting the sickle bar, I tried out a disc mower and a drum mower that were older and used. The bottom line with the mowers and the rakes is if I was going to invest in this type of equipment, I'd have a conversation with Phil. The guy really knows his stuff, and they have a lot of different options that are going to work for your specific tractor and your property and what you're looking for. Here you see me using the Takakita rake that is a dual purpose. This rake can be used as a rake or a tedder, and I actually had to ted some of the hay, and it works well and it's easy to switch between the two. Now, a lot of the comments about the rake were negative, that people said it was too small or they didn't like that style, and everyone wanted me to get a big V-shaped rake, the type that we're all used to seeing. And I know that those are great for bigger baling equipment, but the only concern I have with that type of rake is it collects from such a wide area that it leaves a much larger windrow. And I don't know if this small baler is really designed to pick up a larger windrow like you see here. I kind of think the small windrow is perfect for a small baler. So I didn't have any complaints about this rake at all. Now, Phil did say that he'd like me to test out a larger rake in the spring. So next time you see me baling hay, you'll probably see a different rake. So now that we've covered the equipment that I used for baling, let's talk about the economics of this. Now, there are two separate conversations. You can talk about buying new equipment or buying used equipment. And I'm focusing on new equipment with the understanding that any of these options could also be bought for a lot less used. This baler right here cost around $24,000, and that's a substantial investment. Now, I'm going to assume that if you're even considering this, you already have a tractor and that you're sizing the baling equipment to the tractor you have. In my first year, I baled 450 bales with this small baler. And I decided I could probably sell those for $20 a piece. But at the last minute, I decided to make them $15 a piece. Talking to a lot of people, I think $20 is probably reasonable, and in some areas you might get more than that. The reason I decided to lower my price is because I checked around, and in my area, hay is selling for a lot less than it did last year or the year before when you're looking at larger bales. Those had previously been getting around $70 for a full-size bale, and this year people are getting $40 to $50. So if everyone else is charging less, I decided I should too. Now these bales at 3 foot by 3 foot weigh 350 pounds. So by the volume of hay in them, it's about 1/3 of a 4 by 5 bale. Because 350 times 3 would be 1,050. So the size of your bale does not change the total weight of hay that you've produced. So I think it's a good way to measure dollars per pound. And by that metric, I'm getting a little bit more money for my hay than if I would with larger bales. So that was one concern, that I wouldn't be as profitable on the same amount of hay. And that turned out to not be true. The second concern people had was I would have trouble selling these. That also is not the case. I'm in southeast Kansas, and I thought probably around here everyone only wants the big bales. But I listed these and how many I had, and they all sold within a week. I baled hay again, and I've listed them, and I've already got probably 50 messages from people wanting to buy hay. Basically, they're already sold. And at 244 bales for my second baling, that's around $3,600 of hay off of about 25 acres. So if we do that twice a year, you're selling $7,320 of hay per year. Now, if we figure the baling equipment with everything involved costs $30,000, it's going to take you about 4 years for this equipment to pay for itself. And I think that's pretty darn good for a small property where I'm only baling 6 days a year. That's 1 day to cut, 1 to rake, 1 to bale, and I'm doing that twice a year. So for 6 days of work, I've got this equipment that's going to pay for itself in 3 years, at which point it will still be in good, usable shape. Only doing this small property, you should easily be able to get 10 years out of this equipment. Probably a lot more than that if you just do your basic maintenance on it. Now, a lot of people who are wanting to bale their own hay aren't thinking about selling it. They're wanting to provide it for their own livestock or whatever the case may be. I really see that as financially being a break even. So even though you're not selling it and making that money, that's $7,300 of hay you don't have to buy this year. Now, if I really wanted to pay for this more quickly, I bet I could find some neighboring properties that would allow me to bale their hay as well. And I could pay it off probably in 1 year, if not 2 at the most. Now, you do have to factor in some other things like your cost. I spent some money on fuel. You have to buy the net wrap and depreciation on your tractor. All of those things are factors, but I think they're fairly negligible as a percentage of the $7,000 of hay I baled. And I actually recouped some more money that I haven't mentioned yet, in that I offered delivery. And I charged enough for delivery to offset more than my actual fuel cost and my time for the delivery. And people were glad to pay it. I was able to put 26 of these round bales on my trailer and haul them to people and unload them even if the person receiving the hay didn't have a tractor or any equipment to unload. The bales are just so lightweight and so easy to move around that it makes it a lot easier. And specifically, that's why a lot of these customers wanted to buy these small bales from me. When I go on Facebook Marketplace, I see a lot of listings for bales 3 times this size for only twice the price. And I kind of wondered why people want to buy from me. So I just directly asked them. And the answer was they want to be able to easily move the bales around, or they want to control the volume that they're feeding because they have sheep or goats or smaller livestock that don't need to be fed full bales at one feeding. So all things considered, if you want my advice for a property the size of mine, if you have 20 acres to bale, I would say that it's profitable for you to get the Takakita round baler from Phil at Small Farm Innovations and bale your own hay. Because when I was letting someone else bale this, I was getting virtually no money. And it would be the same thing if I had, livestock to feed on another property or whatever the case was. I wasn't getting much hay out of it. I wasn't getting anything. I was dedicating my property to hay area and not getting any return. And now I'm getting real cash return out of this. And it wouldn't take that long to pay for the equipment. So that's my thoughts on it. I appreciate you taking time to watch the video. I'll put links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.